is Sparta!
I am Spartacus! I stand equal with sword, yet you have me by fucking spear.
1,000 nations of the Persian Empire descend upon you. Our arrows will blot out the sun.
Then we will fight in the shade.
And that those that seek to place heel upon the throat of liberty will fall to the cry of freedom!
This is where we fight! This is where they die! And these shields, boys!
Welcome back to my Spartacus in 300 series. In part 1, I went over the brief history of the wars these properties were based on. In this video, I'll be talking about the characters of 300. Between the 4 seasons of Spartacus and the 2 300 films, there are a ton of characters to go through, so I'll narrow them down as best I can. A large amount of the names are difficult to pronounce, so don't be too harsh on me if I butcher them, alright? They are just a nightmare to say out loud. And I'll just point this out now, I don't like 300 Rise of an Empire all that much, so I won't go into as much detail with that film. I liked a few characters and a few scenes, but other than that, it was pretty dull, boring, stale, the battles were mostly lame, and the speeches were kind of unconventional. David Wenham plays as Dilios, though you may know him better as that one eye patch guy, or the narrator of the film. I can't imagine the movie being as good without his incredible voice guiding us through, making what we're watching seem so much cooler than it really is. His voice can amplify a quiet scene of a boy walking in the snow, staring down a wolf, far more intense. Along with that, he stands as one of Leonidas' best soldiers, and with him being the sole survivor of the battle, it makes sense that he would tell his story in a glorious way to rally his troops.
But from free Greek to free Greek, the word was spread that bold Leonidas and his 300, so far from home, laid down their lives, not just for Sparta, but for all Greece, and the promise this country holds. Now, here on this rugged patch of earth called Plataea, Xerxes' hordes face obliteration!
You may recognize Vincent Reagan from other films like Troy, Clash of the Titans, and Snow White and Huntsman. He tends to shine in these warrior roles. He is the captain of the 300 soldiers and a loyal friend to the king. He and Leonidas have fought many battles together and is one of the only warriors to show emotion on his face. He's not one of the more promoted characters, but he feels the most human to me. He really doesn't want his son to fight and be in this war, but he is obviously proud of him. His best scene was when he was filled with rage and sadness after his son was beheaded and killed right in front of him. I wish that there was more screen time for him. He plays a great soldier and father and is very amusing to watch. Let this guy emote as a soldier and he is great. Was anyone else aware that Michael freaking Fassbender was in this? I didn't recognize him until I watched it recently. He may not play a large role, but I love his banter that he has with the captain's son, kind of like a couple of real goofballs in the military. He also has the best comeback line in the film.
1,000 nations of the Persian Empire descend upon you. Our arrows will blot out the sun.
Then we will fight in the shade.
Dominic West, as Theron, plays as the little sniveling shit traitor to the Spartans. He was bribed by the Persians to prevent the Senate of Sparta to aid Leonidas. He may not be as iconic as some of the other more popular weasel assholes, but he is the best looking one, I'll give him that. And now we have reached the mighty King Leonidas, played by Gerard Butler.
And by Spartan law, we will stand and fight. Die. And all will know that 300 Spartans gave their last breath to defend it. Ho! Ho! Ho!
Madman. You're a madman.
Air and water. But you'll find plenty of both down there.
No man, Persian or Greek, no man threatens a messenger.
You bring the crowns and heads of conquered kings to my city steps. You insult my queen. You threaten my people with slavery and death. Oh, I've chosen my words carefully, Persian. Perhaps you should have done the same.
This is blasphemy. This is madness!
This is Sparta!
Other than his powerful voice, intense glare, and raw badassitude, he is a fantastic example of a good leader. The Council of Oracles, the E4, that are technically above the king, declared that there cannot be a war, but Leonidas went against their word in order to protect his people like any true leader would. He went through the trials of warriors, survived the harshness of the cold, and as king of Sparta, he marched into battle, ready to protect his country, right in the front and center of his army. But I love the concept of a leader whom would be in the front and fight alongside you, rather than the leader that stands above or behind you and makes commands. Many of us today can relate to that. We tend to work a lot harder and remain loyal to suffer with you in the trenches, rather than stick with the kind of leader that just sits back and barks orders and points at you from behind. Leonidas' death felt spectacular, and with Dilios narrating it, the cuts from the king to him and his men and Xerxes built up to the death. I'll talk more about this later on. For the rest of this video, I'll be talking about the characters that were in both films, as well as a couple that were in the sequel. Queen Gorgo, played by Lena Headey, is wife to the king and also a strong, tough mama. Her performance comes off as kinda stale, though there are some moments where she gets real intense and serious. While her husband is off to war, she has to deal with everyone's favorite thing to watch: politics. She's a main character in both films, and after Leonidas dies, she leads the Spartan army to help in the naval battle at the end of the second film. I don't really like her all that much, but I'm glad that she's tough and not a proper little princess. Peter Mensa is the Persian emissary, or more notably as that one guy that gets the foot to the chest.
This is Sparta!
In Rise of the Empire, he plays as Artemisia's mentor in combat skills, and makes him into a somewhat formed character. The sequel did at least one thing right, by including Peter. I would have loved to see more of him kicking some butt, but I get plenty of that in other material. All hail the god-king villain Rodrigo Santoro as Xerxes. His extremely deep-ass voice is really the only thing that I like about this guy. He is a classic dictator who is full of himself and has a god complex, and he makes it very easy for us to hate him. With only 2 characters left, I'll go over them both. Themistocles, played by Sullivan Stapleton, and Artemisia, played by Eva Green. He's the lame hero and she's the cool villain of the sequel. It was very difficult for me to find characters that I like in 300 Rise of an Empire, but other than Peter Mensa, I kind of like Artemisia. Her backstory is simple. Her family was raped and killed, and she was on a Greek slave ship for years, probably enduring the same, all before just being discarded like a rag doll. The Persian emissary found her, trained her, and she quickly became the best warrior in the Persian Empire. Now she only longs for 2 things: for Greece to burn and to find an equally skilled warrior to match her in combat. Then we have Themistocles. He's a Greek warrior that... Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I don't have that much to say on him. He's just so boring in my opinion. I don't really remember anything about him. I was taking notes but forgot to write down anything about him because I was so bored. But he's basically a Greek warrior captain and commands the Navy ships. That's all the important things you really need to know about the guy, for all I know. Watch it yourself if you really want to talk about it. Anyway, Artemisia commands the Persian fleet and is impressed by Themistocles' ability to destroy her ships and requests that they meet up. The scene where they meet up is probably my favorite in the whole movie. The way that they just roughly start to go at it while being enemies, it was the only scene where I was not completely bored out of my mind. Well, that's it for Spartacus in 300 Part 2. Stay tuned for Spartacus in 300 Part 3 coming out within the next couple of weeks. Have a good one, guys. Did you guys like the video? If you did, like, share, subscribe, notify, comment, all that crap. If you hated it, then don't like, share, notify, unsubscribe, or comment. Wait, this is YouTube. Ah, fuck. But before you go, check out the Cinema Squad every other Sunday, where Black Angus reviews, Jeff the Iron Wolf and I live stream and shoot the shit. Links to their channels are in the description below. Also, links to my social media are in the description below. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to be a part of the Rookie Corner podcast.